So who would like to see and hear a fat guy ramble on about how he thought the 50 Shades Trilogy was the biggest train wreck he had ever read? Here's the plot twist. That fat guy was me. I read this 700-page Penthouse letter back in 2015 during the hype the first film created. In order to unabashedly trash it, I had to read all 3 of them, just to see if I could find any kind of redeeming qualities underneath all the debauchery. Even to this day, I still believe that the 50 Shades Trilogy is a Penthouse letter that ran way too long. Just so you know, this wasn't some video where I rambled on and on for an overly long period of time. Everything I said was scripted, just like nearly every video I've done on this channel. The only difference was the old footage was recorded on my desktop computer, which doubled as a makeshift teleprompter. Just to make sure you won't see too much of my chubby baby face from 5 years ago talking to my computer screen, I'll throw some pictures in it for dramatic effect. I think that's it. So enjoy a video that was made before the King's Den Studios became a thing.
They say you cannot judge a book unless you've read it. Well, ready or not, here I come. So during my summer reading, the last 6 books I had read before reading an autobiography about Al Michaels were one of 2 things. 3 books written by 3 notable television preachers, Bishop T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, and Joel Osteen. I didn't read these books to get spiritually fed. I read these books to confirm mine and other voices how televangelists' teachings aren't mostly from the New Testament, or the Old Testament, or the Bible whatsoever. Jake's book I read was about forgiveness. I think T.D. should have cited more scripture about forgiveness instead of letting us know every chapter he's a marriage counselor on the side. The Joyce Meyer book I read was about how God's love is a perfect love, which it is. She used a lot of scripture, and a lot of what she had written is something I would hear out of an old audio sermon from my pastor. In other words, it was the closest to the mark out of the 3. As for Joel Osteen, if spiritually feeding was a diet, you could call this one empty calories. Every day is Friday. No, it isn't. It's New Age crap, and it had a chapter or 2 about loving yourself before you love others, which is further from the gospel truth. That's not how it works. It really felt like eating a bag of Skittles and getting a tummy ache after reading every day of Friday. In between those 3 books, I've decided to try and read with an open mind a trilogy of books that has no place in the mainstream or pop culture, but they are. The trilogy of 50 Shades. 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker, and 50 Shades Free. If you want to know more details about this trilogy of trash, wiki it, Google it, buy the freaking Cliff Notes version of it. But I'll give you the skim of this literary piece of dog crap that started off as X-rated Twilight fanfiction. Socially awkward college kid fills in for a journalist friend, meets and interviews an enigmatic young billionaire. An unlikely relationship blossoms that is filled with manipulation, money, sex, whips, chains, sex toys, and did I mention sex? Now, in the past decade, I've read a lot of books. I've even read the Twilight series and thought, it's okay. Stephenie Meyer tried to tell a good story and did okay. But the thing is, I'm not its target audience. Twilight has been, and always will be, a series of books where its target audience are young adults. You know, teenage girls. 50 Shades' target audience is women between the ages of 18 and 49 because no right-thinking golden age would read this garbage. But I'll let you in on something. I've read the entire collection of Nicholas Sparks, and his target audience is women as well. He's the male equivalent of Daniel Steele or Nora Roberts. The only difference is Sparks' books end up on the big screen and not as a Lifetime movie of the week. I went into 50 Shades of Grey with the hopes that I can find some redeeming quality of this overhyped junk. There had to be some kind of good to come from this experience. I tried and I tried, but I just couldn't. So here's my critique, and I like to think E.L. James has the potential to join the ranks of Steele, Sparks, Roberts, and Amanda Quick. So here are 3 things that I found that really stood out with these novels. The first thing is that it's unrealistic and sends out misleading signals. In the 50 Shades Trilogy, abuse is mistaken for BDSM, or vice versa. I forget which is which. Even the BDS community who have opinions about this book and its BDSM behavior have read this crap and said, that's not how it works. For the most part, people who participate in BDSM are usually consenting adults who are willing to play the game and confine the fun game to their living room, their bedroom, or a room that is tailor-made for whips, chains, leather masks, and ball gags. BDSM never does leave the area where said activity is happening. This means There are no contracts for a woman to sign telling her what to wear, what to eat, what she should look like, or how many hours of sleep she should be logging in. Nor is there any non-disclosure agreement to sign. Also, who is willing to be in a relationship where the partner is controlling, overbearing, and has a penchant for being where you are by chance? Some people don't mind that, but how many women are willing to stick around with that person after a month or two? The second issue I had was the length of this story. It was way too long. An average story arc such as this should have been cut down to one book. I'm being serious. I'm not going to talk about the quality of writing and dialogue of it. It's corny as hell, and Anna and Christian spend most of the third book calling each other Mr. Gray and Mrs. Gray. I get it, lovebirds. You're married now. There was so much filler of the sexual kind. By the time Christian broke Anna's cherry, I was wondering if there was any sort of story going on, or was she going to dance around the issue deciding to be a submissive? The second and third books was more of the same. Somewhere there was a story in there, but it was drowned out by sex on the pool table, sex in Anna's room, sex in the TV room, sex on the piano, sex in the boardroom, sex in the car after a high-speed chase, sex inside the boat, sex outside the boat, sex outside their new home that needed to be built, sex in his parents' boathouse, sex in the bedroom he grew up in, sex, 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 screwing, shagging, boning, humping, plowing, banging. It got to the point that eventually desensitized me by the end of the first book. Oh, they wake up again and they're going to screw again. Alright then. I'll use an example of how this trilogy could have been tightened up in one long but readable 700 pages, give or take. One of my favorite books is Beach Music by Pat Conroy. That's one book I've read about 3 or 4 times now. It's a long read at over 800 pages. If you need a synopsis of the book, Google it or read it yourself. That's not important to the point being made here. There's a lot of backstories being told about Jack McCall, the main character, his late wife Shyla, who committed suicide, leaving Jack to raise his daughter on his own and living in exile in Italy, his dying mother's sexually traumatic childhood where she was put in an orphanage and was repeatedly raped by the priest of the house. Also, his mother had leukemia, and that's what forces him to come back to South Carolina. His Jewish father-in-law's tragic loss of his first family during World War II. There were backstories of his friends growing up, going to high school in the 1960s, the impact of the Kent State tragedy in 1970, and the division of friendships that the Vietnam War created. Beach Music had a lot of backstory to read at times, but it was necessary to read it to find it revealing. This is when a scene where Christian is putting his own cue balls into Anna's pocket should have been taken out and replaced with a story about his youth. How did Gray screw over Jack Hyde when they were growing up? What other traumatic moments of his youth happened before finally being adopted by the Grays? Or why did he continue to get manipulated by a cougar woman when he was just a teenager? This is stuff I don't mind reading. Instead, I'm treated to scenes in his room where Christian touches Anna enough to get her to almost have an orgasm, but stops her from doing so to make a point. Or one of the many countless scenes in his red room of pain where I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell am I reading? By the way, going back to my first issue with this book about the BDSM being inaccurate, in the BDSM game, when the safe word is uttered, that's when the game is over. It doesn't mean stop the game and the person who administered the punishment gets upset over it and holds a grudge later. The third issue I had is very simple. I hate to destroy your illusions, ladies, but 50 Shades is pornography. This is not debatable. You can use euphemisms such as erotica or the ridiculous qualifying phrase mommy porn. It's pornography. By the way, mommy porn? Seriously? So what is daddy porn? Everything that's considered taboo and is found on the World Wide Web? Or if you really want to go back 25 years, everything found in sex shops, which incidentally got a little sales boost thanks to 50 Shades of Grey. Porn is porn is porn is porn. I've read quite a number of romance novels in the past 17 years to note the difference between a book by Joe Beverly and 50 Shades. When I've read the kind of romance stories you'd find on the shelf at Walmart or Target, I know 2 things are going to happen. First, I know I'm getting a pretty good story out of it, and not some Twilight knockoff. Second, I know there will be a few pages of carnal activity. Even Nicholas Sparks' work had the occasional sex scene, but it doesn't dominate the story. Oxford Dictionary's basic definition of pornography is printed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of sexual organs or activity, intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. In other words, numerous sex scenes containing butt plugs, torture devices, physical abuse, oral sex ending in swallowing of semen, cunnilingus, sex in different positions in different locations that don't enhance the story in any way and only serves Christian Grey's demented, sick fetish, porn. So the next time you prudes who've read 50 Shades of Grey want to crucify men for reading stuff on literotica.com, just remember, you've read 50 Shades of Grey. You're no different. Will I be seeing the movies? I've already given this author a chance by reading her Vice, and all she's going to be getting from me is $21. See it, don't see it, read the books, don't read them. I don't care, it's your decision. But know this is a trilogy of books that glamorizes a very unhealthy relationship that needs therapy or just needs to end after Christian gave Anna 50 whacks in 50 Shades of Grey. I tried to find some redeeming quality to this crap, and I never did. Oh well, there's always that cool Elle Goulding song. Love me like you do, love me like you do.